Good morning, everyone. Welcome. My name is Menachem Creditor. It's my honor to serve as scholar in residence and rabbi for UJA Federation of New York. We bring you Torah and music, blessing, and community every weekday. We've been doing so since March 18th, 2020. Today it is Monday, January 13th, 2025. Almost 5 years of Torah every single day, finding each other from the four corners of the world, knowing that we'll just say good morning to each other. We'll help each other. We'll hold each other up. Penny and Susie, Arlene, Jen, it's good to see all of you. Richard, sending you love. Justin, my friend, good to see you. Welcome, welcome, Boker Tov. Anya and Jonathan, Barry and Debbie, Lisa and Linda, good morning. I hope that all of you are safe and well. Joyce, good to see you. Lydia, good to see you too. Penny, thanks for the reminder. It is broadcast 1217. It is day 465 of war since October 7th. Debbie and Fabrice, good to see you. Jack, Linda, I'll say hi to a few more people, and then we're getting moving. Justin, you're in Israel. Look at the sky for us, please. Pray for us. Really glad that you're there. You're anchoring us where we need to be. Deborah and Catherine, Arlene, Julianne, Boker Tov. Peter and Jerry, good to see all of you. Adrian and Natalie. All right, friends, I'm sorry I missed a few of you. My screen is a little bit jumpy. Let's take a breath, sing a bracha, learn some Torah together today. Here we go. Good morning, all of you. I hope that you and yours are safe and well. Many of us have friends and family in Los Angeles, and I know many people, myself, who have lost, I would say lost everything, but thank God they did not. They have their lives. But the loss and the grief, and God forbid, loss of life, that has accompanied these terrible fires that are barely under control, are captivating all of our attention. And I would say all of our attention, except that today is also not just, I can't believe I was about to say that, the 465th day of war. 1 year ago today was the 100th day that our sisters and brothers were captive. 1 year ago today was the 100th day that our sisters and brothers were held captive by terrorists, having been captured and terrorized on October 7th. And I know, friends, that this is hard to continue hearing, but it was hard 100 days in, which was 1 year ago. We cannot fathom what it has been for their families and their friends. All of us have been praying every single day. Please God, these next few days should prove a shift in their status. They should come home now. The world is riveted, understandably, by the fires in LA, the loss of lives, the loss of properties. We haven't even mentioned in the last little while the 60,000 Israeli citizens displaced from their homes in the north 465 days ago, who have come home to rubble where their homes used to be. It's not the same at all. And it is hard to remember. And that's actually what I want to point to right now, because we are beginning a new book of the Torah. The book of Shemot, the book of Exodus, begins this week. And there are many parts of it that are worthy of note. One of them is a very famous phrase in Hebrew, Vayakom melech hadash asher lo yada et Yosef. I want to focus on this. The English translation that we'll work with today is, and a new king arose who did not know Joseph. Let's review the story a little bit. There were 14 years of intensity described at the end of the book of Genesis. We just finished it this past Shabbat. Those 14 years were a global intense experience, with 7 years of abundant crops and 7 years of famine, during which the entire world, or at least the known world, went to Egypt for food. And how was there grain and food to be had in Egypt? Because Joseph was there, had been sent by his brothers, sent by God, however we understand the Breshit, the Genesis stories, to understand and interpret Pharaoh's dreams about these 14 years, 7 years of plenty, 7 years of famine, and then suggested the management strategy to nationalize and consolidate all of the fields in Egypt and make sure that there would be enough to be rationed during the years of famine. I share all of this because it is unfathomable that a new king arose upon Egypt, a new pharaoh, asher lo yada et Yosef, who didn't know Joseph. Impossible. Impossible. Joseph was the second in command in all of Egypt, in charge of the distribution of grain for all of the world. And a new king arose who didn't know Joseph. Commentators and even casual readers of the text who know anything about the backstory look at this and say, how is it possible? What could this mean? Well, it has been the case in different moments of history that when a new ruler, a new president, a new anyone comes to power, some of what they try to do, depending on the personality of this new leader, is erase from the annals of history, from training manuals, from national monuments, any recognition of leaders who had been there in the past. And whereas this is a pattern in history, it is jarring to go from the end of the book of Breshit, of Genesis, to the beginning of the book of Exodus, where we find ourselves now, and to say that the new king of Egypt didn't know about Joseph. So some commentators suggest he knew but refused to acknowledge. He knew but rejected. Some radical suggestions include the idea that it wasn't even a new king. It was a king whose heart became hardened, similar to the way that we will read later in this book during the plagues, how Pharaoh's heart, he hardens his own heart, and then by the pattern of it, he cannot unharden his heart. I say this because it is hard to remember. It is hard to remember, even with, as Jerry points out, the pattern of what he's calling historical amnesia, an ahistorical way of being, or as Angela is pointing out, that the pharaohs would have been patrilineal, so a son would have been jealous of Joseph. Even with that, you would have expected, I would have expected the Torah to say, a new king arose who was jealous of his father's attention to Joseph, which by the way, plays into the animated movie, The Prince of Egypt. Not jealousy of Joseph, but jealousy of Moses. And as Caroline's asking, Some commentators suggest that it wasn't immediate, even though we have gone week to week, book to book. Caroline says, is it supposed to be the very next king or a long time later? The notion of time is fascinating in the Torah. We don't know how much time has passed. But for us, let me suggest just for today, that since this is our narrative that we're reading, and it is one book after the next, one verse after the next, one moment, 1 week after the next, that people can be quick to forget the 60,000 human beings in the north of Israel who have been homeless for 465 days. And when they return home, their homes are often in rubble. It is hard to remember for 465 days, 1 year after the 100th day, that there remain 94 people now, sisters and brothers of ours, Jewish and not, Israeli and not, 7 Americans still, held by terrorists in Gaza. It is hard to remember steadily for a period of time, and I'm not letting the Pharaoh off the hook. That king, that new king. We don't let anyone off the hook. Forgetfulness when it comes to leaders, intentional, willful ignorance of the past, a revision of the past. It is unacceptable. We know what is real. We must remember what is real. We must be committed to learning the lessons of history. Otherwise, as philosophers have pointed out, we are doomed to repeat the pattern, condemned to live in cyclical pain, and we reject that idea. As Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, Zichrono Livracha, of blessed memory, often said, according to Judaism, time moves in 2 ways. One of them is cyclical. We relive, we reenact our past through holidays, through ritual. It is a beautiful commitment to keeping alive our memory. It's part of the genius of Judaism, to reenact through Pesach's Seder, to remember myself as if I had left Egypt, and only by embodying, internalizing, eating my story through the rituals of Seder, that I feel the bitterness. Obviously I don't, but I remember it, I invoke it. By living in a sukkah for 7 days, I remember wandering. By hearing the shofar on Rosh Hashanah, I remember the sacrifice of Isaac. These memories are meant to be alive in me, in us, so that we can make decisions about the future based on our experiences, based on our history, on accumulating wisdom. So when the Torah says that a new king arose over Egypt who did not know Joseph, it means many things, including willful erasure of history. Well, we stand as testimony, friends, today, as we have every single day for the last 465 days, that we do not forget. We are the people that remembers. We wear our family on our chest. We wear our ancestors in our souls. We eat our history. We hold and cherish and will learn from our history. We have made mistakes in the past, and we have been subject to cruelty in the past, and we refuse to accept that as a pattern that will be endured. 1 year ago today was the 100th day that our sisters and brothers were taken, stolen from their homes, our grandparents and our babies, our neighbors, people who are Jewish, people who are Christian, people who are Muslim, Bedouin Israelis, Arab Israelis, Jewish Israelis, Christian Israelis were taken. And we are called not to forget. We are the people that remembers. We will not erase history. And there's no comparison between the devastation in the north of Israel, the south of Israel, and the fires in Los Angeles right now. but we must make sure that our memory includes pain that happens elsewhere. The cruelty of what has been perpetrated upon us and the devastation that has resulted in Gaza, in Los Angeles. They're not the same kinds of pain. But if we don't learn, if we're not in the habit of reviewing our history so we can make better decisions, we will never escape the catastrophe of climate crisis. We will never escape the terrible cycle of war when a non-state actor, a terrorist group, infiltrates a state. The response is devastating. Look at Gaza now, what Hamas has done to it. When we do not learn from our own history, and by our own I mean all of us, our shared history, we are condemned to repeat it. And so we have to make the decision, the conscious decision, to remember, to accept our obligation as a Jewish community. And in that Jewish community, we are privileged to count many people who are not Jewish, who are part of our family, all of you and so many others. The obligation to remember, the word zachor, means we hold everyone. Angela, of course we do not forget New Orleans, the terrorist attack on January 1st. We don't forget any of this. We are capacious enough. Our souls are big enough, expansive enough to remember it all. And when we read the verse in this week's Torah portion, Vayakom melech hadash asher lo yada et Yosef, a new king arose over Egypt who didn't know Joseph, we have to say and scream and internalize the reality that that was a choice. The choice not to remember. Well, we make the choice to remember. We remember. We remember. I have countless faces in front of my eyes all the time, and I'm sure you do too. I don't want to say one name to the exclusion of others. We remember our sisters and brothers being held in bondage now. And we will hold the world's leaders accountable, that they should remember. As Lydia just wrote beautifully, remember and educate and communicate. Be proud, and although exhausted, continue being proud, and shout out with strength and dignity. Yes. Amen. So with me, friends, remember that some of the words of Hatikva say, Hatikva bat shnot alpayim, the hope of 2,000 years. Think about the effort it took and it takes to remember. For 2,000 years, we've been around a long time. We do not forget. Let us never forget, even when we have brought them home. Today, we do not forget. Sing with me, friends. Affirm our ability to remember. Kolon baleva pnima nefesh Yehudi homia ulefatei mizrach kadima ayin letzion Sophia, O lo avda tikvateinu, hatikva bat shnot alpayim, liot am chofshi be'artzeinu, Eretz Zion v'Yerushalayim. Liot am chofshi be'artzeinu, Eretz Zion v'Yerushalayim. Bring them home now. Am Yisrael Chai. See you tomorrow, friends.